Hey everyone. Thank you guys for being here today and choosing to listen to the Diet Diaries. There's a lot of new people who are finding the podcast these days, which I'm so happy about, honestly, because like my number one mission is to get this podcast and the support and the coaching and the skills and the connection that is inside of it out to as many as women as possible, out to as many women as possible. So one way that you can help the podcast and help me is by sharing an episode, by sharing the podcast with another person in your life that you think could benefit from it. Whether this is the first time you've listened, or your 10th, or your 100th, or your 289th, as might be the case if you are like an OG longtime person. I so appreciate it. And you are helping me connect with more people. You're helping that person because now they have support they didn't have. And then you're also helping more people find the podcast, right? Because when you share it, there's little algorithm things that kind of, pick up on that. And it's good for everyone. So thank you for that. Okay, today let's talk about binge eating. And when I say binge eating, I am talking about that feeling that you get when you are like kind of out of control, where you go into fuck it mode, where one thing leads to the next, where you go from one thing bouncing to the next, you never feel satisfied, and before you know it, you have eaten like 10,000 snacks, you have blown through half a box of cookies, you have finished off one or two or three things that were sitting in your fridge or your pantry, and you feel like absolute shit, and the very next thought that comes into your brain is fuck. How am I going to fix this? I did a freebie hot seat coaching thing a couple of weeks ago. It's funny, the questions that were asked on this have now inspired a couple of episodes. Last week's episode was inspired by another question from the same group, as is today's. So one of the women shared that a couple of times a month, typically always on the same day, for her it was a Sunday, she ends up binging like inside of her pantry. And what happens is she ends up eating like all this leftover kind of gross, stale crap that she finds laying around, like stuff that her kids didn't finish, or stuff maybe that she didn't really like, or things that someone bought and just kind of sat there. And she's like, I'm aware that I'm doing it. I'm not like checked out. I know myself doing it. My husband will say to me like, hey, I don't want to share her name. Sandy, that was not her name. Like, why are you doing this? And she'll be like, just leave me alone. Like, just leave me alone. And this feeling of like, I don't know what else to do in this moment. And she was like, why is this happening? I don't know what to do about it. And she's like, do I need to just stop buying snacks? Like, what is the solution? Do I need to like put some rules in place? So I did what I do. And I listened to her and I started asking some really specific questions around, what are you eating during the week? How full are you after meals? Are you enjoying meals? And very, very quickly, things started to reveal themselves around the behaviors that she has during the week around food, which are very restrictive, very rigid, and have been for a long time. And she openly acknowledged that. She's like, I like really struggle. I always want to lose 5 or 10 pounds. I objectively know that my body's actually like the same size as it was in high school. And I still just like don't feel good. And I feel like if I don't have all of this structure and all these rules in place, that I will just like go kind of off the rails, which is kind of what's happening on the weekend. And so I wanted to kind of just talk through this one specific scenario that this woman shared. And I so appreciated her honesty and her vulnerability, because I know that so many of you listening are nodding your heads being like, oh my God, me too. I do that too. And thinking of all the ways that you have tried to fix it or tried to make it stop. And here's the thing. There is, without question, like truly, like when I say scientific fact, right? This is really like psychology of eating behavior. When you restrict food, it will show up as some form of overeating or a binge at some other time. There is a direct relationship between those two behaviors. If you are not restricting food, you will not have a binge. Now, this could be restriction showing up in many ways. This could be restriction that you are currently engaging in. This could be a restriction that you engaged in the past, recently, or a long time ago that was never really addressed. So this can get kind of really complex depending on your history. And it's funny because Paula and I talked about this in the Cult of Diet Culture episode a couple of weeks ago, where that feeling of urgency, of scarcity, of wanting to overeat, of binging, of going from one snack to the next, to the next, to the next, and never feeling satisfied comes from a place of restriction. It comes from a place of lacking. It comes from a place of, oh my God, I'm not going to have access to this thing, so I need it now. But the reality is that we have access to those things. We can literally have those foods whenever we want. We put these self-imposed restrictions on it because we feel so out of control around these foods, which is often, it becomes a little bit of like a chicken and egg, like which came first. Do I feel out of control because I restricted these foods, or am I restricting these foods because I feel out of control? Typically, it's because we are taught from basically birth that some foods are good and some foods are bad. And the bad foods have to be restricted, and they are rewards, or they are special occasions, or they're for when you finish your plate or eat your vegetables, and that some foods are going to make you fat and some foods are going to make you gain weight. So we associate and have beliefs around certain foods that are basically become like the air we breathe. That's how innate it is. That's how ingrained and conditioned it is to us. So then we respond to those beliefs in a normal way, right? Binging when you restrict food is a totally normal response. There's nothing wrong with you. I will even say there's nothing bad about that. It's your body doing what it's designed to do, right? If you are restricting something, your body's going to be like, hold on a second, wait, I need more of that thing. And it's going to go after it. And your body is way smarter than your brain, right? So your body knows when you are restricting, when you're not eating enough, when you're not enjoying your food, when you're not getting the nutrition that you need, right? You need carbs, you need fat, you don't just need protein. Your body knows that, and it will create signals that will make it feel hard to stop eating. But what happens is when you give your body what it actually needs, which is not just nutrition, which is also food that you enjoy, because we eat for pleasure. We don't just eat for fuel. We don't just eat for nutrition. We eat for pleasure. When you allow yourself to have that, those signals die way down, right? This is basically the same thing as like kind of food noise. Again, your body knows how to keep you alive. It knows what you need, and it's going to override your brain. This is why you feel so out of control, because you're thinking one thing, but your body wants something else. And the signals from the body get so powerful. But our brain has a different agenda. So bottom line, you will not be able to stop going into fuck it mode, binging, excessively overeating until you stop restricting. That's a fact. That is a fact. And I know that's hard to hear. I know that makes you uncomfortable. I know you're probably might be getting defensive. That's okay. That's totally fine. Just let it sit there. You don't have to do anything about it right now. Because here's the thing, the way that you stop restricting, that's the work we do in coaching, right? So if you're listening to this, you are someone who sees yourself reflected like in the title or the show notes of this podcast. You're like, oh, I'm doing that. And I know it's not working for me, but I don't know how to fix it. Like, I want to do something about it because I know how terrible it feels, but I don't know what to do, right? That's what I'm going to kind of walk you through now. I think a lot of people at this point are familiar with the framework of intuitive eating, which is wonderful in many ways and is used extensively in clinical eating disorder recovery. I use parts of intuitive eating in my work, and parts of it I don't use. Because very often for the women that are coming to me, intuitive eating kind of becomes a little bit, lacks structure. And that is very jarring and very unsettling for the nervous system. To be someone who is coming from a place of extreme structure, right? If you're restricting food in any way, or you're labeling food as good and bad, and you're deciding when I'm allowed to eat something, when I'm not allowed to eat something, or you are making up for something that you've eaten with another behavior around food, that is all very rigid structure and restriction. And if you're coming from that place, to flip a switch and go over to something like intuitive eating where there's no structure is like, oh my God, you will feel totally unmoored. So I approach this from a very structured place, but a different type of structure, a type of structure that's actually in alignment with your mental health and your quality of life. So I'm going to walk you through the example that I talked about with, quote, Sandy on this call, right? So we identified that she had already made a lot of progress. Like when she goes out to eat with friends, she shared that now she will order something that she wants. And what she shared, she's like, because I don't want people looking at me and saying, oh my God, why is she ordering like salmon with steamed vegetables when the rest of us are getting like burgers and fries and whatever. She was like, I want to go out. I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to worry that people are looking at what I'm eating. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. All this to say that she was able to get herself to a place where she is able to do that when she goes out to eat with friends, but that's not something that's happening constantly, right? That's not happening frequently enough that it's really making a change in all of her other eating behavior. And what she shared is that she makes her own dinner every night. Her family will eat something else, and she will make like a protein and a vegetable for herself, because that's what she feels comfortable and safe eating. So what we did is I said, so to kind of sum that up, the point of this is that she is really not enjoying what she's eating the vast majority of the time. And that's why it's catching up as these binges, right? Again, we eat for pleasure. And if you are gagging down a protein and vegetables and you're not having a carb, or you're not having a fat, or you're not putting salad dressing on, or you're never having sweets or like nut butters or all these foods that you might feel really scared of, it catches up with you and it shows up as a binge. And then because you don't know how to be around those foods, you don't know how to eat them, you only know how to overeat them. You only know how to eat all of them or eat none of them. You don't know how to eat some of them. So we have to start introducing, and you need to start learning how to eat some of those foods, right? Because it sucks to eat all the fucking cake, and it also sucks to eat no cake at all. And this is not a quote, everything in moderation. That's like what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's just talk, right? What does that mean? And this is not about moderation, because let's say you fucking love a piece of cake and you really want to eat the whole slice and have a little bit more. Well, guess what? You can. But choosing to eat an entire piece of cake because you fucking love it and you're enjoying it every single bite up until the very last one is very different than having a binge in your pantry on the weekends because you never allow yourself to eat cake. Those are two very, very different situations. One is completely self-regulated, intentional, and thoughtful, and one is out of control, reactionary, and panicked. Not the same. So I asked her, I'm like, what is a food that you would like to eat, but that you kind of feel afraid of or really don't allow yourself? And she said pasta. And I'm like, great. And I guarantee, I know a lot of you listening are like, oh yeah, pasta. I know, nodding your heads. So I didn't say to her, oh, well, just start eating pasta 3 nights a week. That's kind of what intuitive eating approaches. And this is not me. I want to be very clear. Intuitive eating is wonderful and amazing, but it does give you it gives you permission in a way that's like, whatever you're in the mood for, just eat it and see what happens. That can be really terrifying for people. And people know, like, I'm going to gain weight. Sometimes, yes, you do gain weight in intuitive eating practices. And then over time you regulate. Women who come to me are terrified because they're terrified of gaining weight. And there are other ways of doing this. There are other ways of getting to a place where you know how to eat pasta without eating all the pasta or none of the pasta without gaining weight, because we do it with structure. So I'm going to explain to you what that means. So what I said to her was, okay, what would it feel like to take a 1/4 cup of cooked pasta and put it on your plate with what you're already eating, right? So with your protein and your veggie. So she'll make pasta for the rest of her family and they'll eat that, like pasta and meatballs. So like on the night that you make that, take a 1/4 cup of that pasta, put it on your plate with your food and see what it feels like. It's an experiment, right? It's an experiment in terms of what does that bring up for you in your brain? What's the noise? What's the conversation? What's your brain telling you about that pasta on your plate? What does it feel like to eat that with your food? Do you enjoy it? How do you feel when you're done? Do you feel more full, less full, any different? And then as you practice this, and we talked about doing this once a week, right? This is what I'm talking about with structure. We're talking about a specific portion that goes along with the meal she's already eating. So the safety, the familiarity of that dinner stays with her. We add something small to it. This is like exposure therapy. which is an approach that's used in so many different realms of mental health, around OCD, dealing with anxiety. This is how food allergies, you can introduce in very like teeny tiny microscopic doses the thing the person's allergic to, and their body builds up a tolerance to it, right? This is how strength training works, progressive overload. It's the same idea. You are exposing yourself to a food that feels really scary in a very controlled, structured way, alongside the things that already feel safe and familiar to you, like that dinner that she's eating every night. We're not taking that away. We're not replacing it. We are simply adding a small amount to it and noticing what happens, right? And then the big question alongside this is, after a few weeks of doing this, what happens to that binge on the weekend? I don't think that doing this one night a week for 3 weeks is going to eliminate those binges, right? And I just spoke to her 10 days ago, right? So I don't have like an outcome for you over this, but I have had other clients go through this same process, and the outcome over time is slowly more and more pasta gets added to the plate. So it becomes something like more like a side dish regular. And because we did it so slowly and bit by bit, you learn and you feel comfortable with how to eat it. You know how to self-regulate it. And now because you have this thing regularly, it no longer feels like this scarcity thing. And that then slowly starts to reduce the binging over time. This happens time and time again with countless clients. We have gone through this process. That's why I suggested it to her, because this is evidence-based. This works. This is very often how binge eating is treated. I use this on myself. I use this with my clients. This is what is shown kind of in research. So that's right. This isn't just like, oh, let's just throw this up against the wall. No, this is a technique and a skill that works. So I am 1,000% confident that if she's able to practice this over time, we will start to see outcomes, right? Now, the thing is, she's going off and doing this on her own. Doing this totally on your own can be really difficult. That's why being in like a coaching container and having support and having someone to talk to every week or every other week, figuring out how to handle this. When am I going to do it? When my brain starts telling me don't eat the pasta, you're going to gain weight, having that quarter cup of pasta, your brain's going to tell you all kinds of shit. Your pants are tight. Immediately, your pants are going to feel tight, right? Now I can't eat XYZ tomorrow. How are you working through all those obstacles, all that noise that's going to come up? That's, it's hard to do this on your own and be like really upfront with you. I'm not saying you can't do it. Absolutely. Like you can. Some people can, some people can't. But all this to say that, right, this is what I suggested to her, and she felt really good about it. And she's like, I never really thought about doing that before. And it felt really doable to her. And she seemed excited about it. There was a feeling of like relief almost, right? Because she was getting permission to have this food that she really, really wanted and enjoyed, but didn't know how to do it in a way that was not either, again, is basically not going to like send her off the rails, right? So again, we're looking, when we experiment with something, you're looking and evaluating that with multiple different experiences, right? What's the noise in my brain? What does this taste like? How do I enjoy it? How do I feel after the meal in terms of fullness? What's my snacking or my hunger or my food noise like later in that night? And then as I repeat this over time, what starts to happen to that weekend, those weekend binges? Does that start to shift over time? Do I notice a difference? Again, maybe they don't go away completely over time, but they decrease in frequency. They decrease in intensity. I'm able to be more specific about what I'm really in the mood for, have that, and be done with it, right? So there's progress shows up in many, many different ways. It's not just like I either binged or I didn't. Or I either thought about this food or I didn't, right? It's all of this exists on a spectrum, and the work progresses on a spectrum. Again, this is why having support, being in like under the wing of a coach can be so helpful. So you are continually knowing how to identify progress, knowing what to look for, knowing what to evaluate, knowing what worked or what didn't, and then knowing what to do about it. What's my next step? This didn't work, so what am I going to try instead? This did work, great. Now what comes next? Because your brain is just conditioned to like either cutting out everything or saying fuck it and eating everything. And there's a whole world of stuff in between those two options, right? Which is what we're talking about. So applying structure in this way is very strategic. It's very methodical. And the way that we continue to build on that structure over time is very specific, right? So depending on what this experience was like for her and what she shared with me, right? If she were my long-term client, that would inform what comes next. And then we would slowly build on that over time until she gets to a point where she is eating pasta regularly, depending that's different for everyone. And she feels really good in her body, right? She's in a place where her food noise is down, where she feels good moving around. She feels good in her clothes. The bitchy mean girl voice in her brain about her body is really, really quiet, right? So we're looking at all of these factors together. So I wanted to talk through this because this feeling of feeling out of control around food, of overdoing it, of being good during the week and going off the rails during the weekend, this is all what I am talking about, right? I'm really not talking about per se like binge eating disorder, which is a clinical eating disorder, which really does kind of, that feeling of binging exists on a spectrum, of feeling like I can't stop, or I'm going from one thing to the next, or I never feel satisfied, or I always want more, or I'm never full, or I'm constantly thinking about this stuff. It's a terrible feeling, right? And think about what could you be doing in your life, and what would your life be like if so much of your time, energy, and attention wasn't dealing with this, wasn't constantly playing let's make a deal, wasn't negotiating with yourself, wasn't being like, again, your bitchy inner mean girl. What could you be doing with all that time, energy, and attention? Like, it's really, really important to think about, because those are finite resources. And when it's getting used up on your food and your body and all of that, it's not going towards other stuff in your life. So I hope this was helpful. Reach out if you've got specific questions. I'm always happy to chat back and forth. That's what I got for you today. Thank you for listening. Please share. Please drop a rating in Apple Podcasts or in Spotify. Again, it really helps people find the podcast. If you're loving it. If you're not, you can just skip the rating. And I'll be back next week.